Speaking of bills, actually, if you're in a more of a formal, sophisticated place that uses a printer to print out your bills for you, as of about the last year, maybe a little over a year ago, a new law was passed mandating 10% service charge be added to anything served in a bar or restaurant. Now, a lot of business owners were just really happy because they said to themselves, man, the government has just given me the right to charge 10% more for everything, and they put that right in their own pocket. And the problem is that there's no way to know which restaurants and bars actually give that to their staff versus which ones don't. And so what we do, and something else, if you're in a little rural area, like way out in the country down some dirt road or something like that, your bill might actually just be a piece of paper with a number written on it. No descriptions, no tax, no anything, just like, oh, you had a casado and you had 4 juices, and that's 4,000 cologne, and they're just handing you a piece of paper that says 4,000 written on it. You're like, oh, great, it's my receipt. So, but interestingly enough, those places also don't expect any tips, but I'll come to that in a second. So anyways, because of this confusion, we've sort of developed our own system when it comes to tipping, and it's a little bit complicated, but we're going to share that with you just so that you've got a guide that you can use and avoid confusion yourself. So we put this together right here. All right, this is our guide for tipping. Now, when it comes to wait staff, depending on the service, if the service was excellent, we'll tip anywhere from 5% and upwards. And you'll notice that I said 5 and not 10. And the reason is because most wait staff here don't split tips with the kitchen. It's very rare for the cooking staff to get tipped. So that's why the second thing on that list is cooks. We'll also tip them 5%. And the way that I do that is I will literally have money in each hand, and I will hand some to the waiter and I'll say, this is for you and the guy behind the bar. And then I will stand up, walk to the service window at the back of the restaurant and physically hand that to the chef and the cook and say, this is for you guys. And they are always very happy to get that because it's so unusual. Now, it's very important to tell you that Ticos, or Costa Ricans as they call themselves, Ticos, almost never tip for anything. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're out in the country, if you're in some place that's not far from the tourism areas, if you leave a tip, half of the time, or I've had it happen where people have come out of the restaurant and said, hey, whoa, you left too much money on the table, right? This is too much. And they thought they were doing the nice thing by returning my money to me. And the reason is because they actually are paid a living wage to do that job. They're not expected to live on tips. However, in an area like this where it's all tourism, they've come to expect tips a little bit because of the fact that the tourists show up and just tip all the time anyways. So it's kind of, hit or miss. Just be aware that it's not mandatory at all like it is in other parts of the country. Now, moving on to other people that you might want to consider tipping. Guides, right? So let's say you go and you do some tours, rafting or zip lining or whatever the case may be. If you've got a great guide and he's really attentive and does a fantastic job, of course you should tip him. How much really depends on the quality of the tour, what you paid for it. If it was on just a 1 hour, $10 tour, obviously tipping him $30 is kind of crazy. But conversely, if it's a full day and the guy's been attentive and awesome the entire time, why not give him $20? So that's roughly the range. Is anywhere from 0 to 20 or $2 to $20 depending on the length of the tour and the quality of the guide. One really important thing to note, again, the person that you put the money into the hands of, so for instance this tour guide, they almost never share it with the driver, and that driver is the guy that stayed with the vehicle the entire time, made sure that your backpacks and all of your belongings were kept safe and so on. So it's not a bad idea to maybe hand that guy a few bucks as well. And we recommend anywhere from $2 to $5 a person, again just depending on the overall experience and the price of the tour, etc. But at least a few bucks, and drivers really appreciate it. Final two things. If you've got a van driver, like for a private transport to and from the airport, we recommend, well, again, if the guy is attentive, if he speaks English, if he doesn't text on his phone while he's driving, if he points out landmarks along the way and he's almost kind of like a tour guide as well, we recommend tipping him $10 or $20. If it's a shorter thing, like more of just like a 1 or 2 hour transport, then maybe $5 or $10. $10 I think is a good thing. We ourselves usually tip double these numbers, and the reason is simply because everybody knows us here and they know that we own a tourism company. So we want people to think well of us so that when you tell them that you're Casa de Costa Rica clients, they'll think well of you too. And treat you well. The final thing is taxis. Right now we're in this park in downtown La Fortuna, and we're actually standing right next to a taxi stand. This is Easter weekend, so it's one of the busiest times of the year. It's busy down here during Easter as it is during Christmas, if you can imagine. So right now there's not a single taxi in the stand. It's all Costa Ricans, all on vacation, and taxis are running full tilt. But almost none of them are getting any tips because locals do not tip taxis, ever. I've never seen a local, a Tico, give a tip to a taxi driver. That said, taxi drivers, just like the cooks, and just like the van drivers and the tours, they really appreciate the tips too when they get them, just because it's not something that's expected. So what I usually do is, if it's a quick trip, just $4 or $5 or whatever, then the coins that are left in my hand after I pay the fare with the bill, I'll usually just hand over to the driver and say, there you go, that's a tip. By the way, the word for tip is propina. Propina. So if they come back and say, hey, you left this money, and they don't speak English and you don't speak Spanish, just say propina. And they'll be like, oh, great, it's a tip. Okay, thank you. So yeah, and again, if you hire a taxi for like a 20 or 30 minute drive and it's 30 or 40 bucks, then that's more substantial. That's maybe worth tipping the driver for. Again, if he's attentive and points things out and he's interested, especially if he speaks English and he's making an effort, I always recommend rewarding effort. So anyways, that's pretty much it. I hope that this helps to demystify what can sometimes be a pretty complicated little issue down here. And we look forward to hosting you soon. Bye for now.